Good morning, 12th standard students. So today we will study about Linux desktop. In our previous class, we have studied about the Linux operating system and the components where we have studied about the shell, kernel, and the application, which are the main components of Linux environment. So today we will study about the Linux desktop, and so let us study about it. That Linux desktop is a genome in Ubuntu, whereas this genome stands for GNU Network Object Model Environment. So this genome stands for GNU Network Object Model Environment. Object Model Environment, which means it's a free and open source desktop environment. It is free and it is because it is open source and it's a desktop environment. It provides a desktop environment. We can study about it here that genome is a desktop environment for free and open source system. Okay, so desktop is a place where icons, menus, panels, backgrounds are arranged and displayed. So to log in to Linux operating system, we are provided with a user ID and a password. As it is a very secure, it provides a very secure system, and after entering a username and a password, the Linux desktop will appear on the screen. So this is a rough diagram of how your Linux desktop will appear in a computer, and here I have a clean diagram of it where you can it is same as by the any other operating system like Windows. So the components of Linux desktop are top bar. The bar across the top of the screen provides access to the date and time, system indicators, currently open applications. Here in the top bar, we can see the system time, the settings that we can do in the operating system, and any other tool. The next is desktop, which is as common as the desktop in any other operating system, where we can open, run, rearrange multiple program and application. Here in this desktop, we have a dock. The dock occupies the left side of the screen. It shows currently open apps and shortcut of your favorite. Unlike Windows desktop, here we can get a panel on the left side where we can get the bar where we have a common and very application which are favorite, and it provides all the common application on the left panel. Then we have an app drawer. It is at the bottom of the dock. When click, it lists off all the application installed in a computer in a grid of icons. So it will show all those application in grid of icons, and it is just below the dock. Here we can see in the diagram. See, this is the dock on the left side, and here in the desktop we can see the frequent application and all other application installed in our system. So this desktop is very common in Linux, and it is very user friendly for the usage of user. The next component is a search. It appears at the top of the activities overview. Click activities option to open search bar. So here we can see right on the top of the desktop, we have this search button, and whatever is installed in the system, what the file and folders that we have created in the system can be searched by clicking on this icon. Then the next component is about the system indicators. These are the individual icons showing battery life, network connectivity, sound, Bluetooth, and many more. So here we can see right on the Linux desktop we have indicators where we can see the date and time, volume, battery life, and then any wireless connectivity. This is for the wireless LAN or WAN, and then battery. All this information, battery backup, all this information we can get right on the top of the Genome desktop. Next is the shell in Linux. In Linux, shell refers to the program that is used to interpret the type commands the user sends to the operating system. We have already studied about the shell, and we have already understood that shell is used to give the command to the operating system of the Linux, which is further understood by the kernel, and then the kernel make the system, the hardware of the system, work accordingly for the user. The shell is used for programming because we can program the shell quickly and simply. Shell has similarities to the Windows command prompt, just like a command prompt in Windows, where we give a textual command and then we can get our work process. Similarly, here we have a shell for Linux, but it is more powerful and capable of running reasonably complex program. Here in Linux, shell are used to run the more complicated programs rather than the command prompt in Windows. The shell executes shell programs, often called scripts, which are interpreted at runtime, and the Linux has following types of shell, such as Bourne shell, C shell, TC shell, Corn shell, and Bash shell. We'll study about further about these shells, but before that, I want to show you the comparison between the shell and the kernel, because time and again we are studying about the shell and the application in Linux and then the kernel. So we have studied already about the shell and the kernel, but then now I want to show you the difference between the shell and the kernel. Just look at this table. I've just managed to get this information for you from this pda.com, where we can see the differentiation between the kernel and the shell. We have already studied about these two topics. Then maybe this differentiation will make us little clear our concept about this two different topics, the kernel and the shell. The kernel is a computer program which acts as the core of the computer's operating system and has the control over everything in the system, whereas in a shell, a computer program which works as the interface to access the services provided by the operating system. Secondly, the kernel is the core of the system that controls all the tasks of the system, because this is the main system in a Linux which controls the hardware of the computer. And whereas the shell is the interface between the kernel and the user, because user is giving a command to the kernel with the help of a shell, and it does not have any types. It is just a one system in the Linux where it will get the information from the user through the shell and get it done by the all the hardwares in the computer. Whereas as we have just studied about the shell, that it has different types like bone shell, C shell, corn shell, and bash, also known as born again shell, etc. So this is a differentiation table between the kernel and the shell, and time and again we will study about this. So it is very important for us to know the difference between these two different concepts in a operating system. So studying further about the types of a shell, the first type is a bone shell. Why it is called a bone shell? Because the original bone shell is named after its developer Steve Bone, and it was the first shell used for the Unix operating system. It provides features which are sufficient for most programming names, and so that is why it was called a Bone shell, because the developer of this shell was Steve Bone. So after his name, the name of the shell was kept. The next is C shell. It was designed to allow user to write shell scripts, programs using a syntax similar to C programming languages. As we are giving a command in Windows using a C programming, similarly here we can use a C shell instead of C programming in Windows. So it is also known as CSH, C shell, short for a C shell. Next is TC shell. TC shell is an expansion of C shell. It has all the same feature but add the ability to use keystrokes from the Emacs word processor to edit text on the command line, and it is also known as TCSH, which is a short for TC shell. Next is a Korn shell. It was written by David Korn and it attempts to merge the feature of C shell, TC shell, and Ball shell under one package. So, when this Korn shell was developed, it was named after the developer of the shell, whose name was David Korn, and it is the mixture of all the previous shells like C shell, TC shell, and Ball shell. So it also includes the ability for developers to create a new shell of its own. So it is very powerful shell of all the previous shells we have used. Next is Bourne shell, and it is updated version of the original Bourne shell, and it was created by the free software foundation of its open source GNU project. Its syntax is similar to the Bourne shell and it incorporates some advanced feature found in C, TC, and Corn shell. So Bourne shell, Bash is the full form of Born Again Shell. Born Again Shell. So that is why it is called a Bash. So it is an advanced version of the shell, Bourne shell. Okay, so it is the more powerful shell than the previous all the previous shell used. Now we will study about the shell commands, means what sort of high level command that we can give to a computer having the Linux operating system, and just like Windows, we use DOS prompt, where again we can give a command in a high level language so that a computer can understand our commands, and then it gets translated into the level language, which is the actual language of the computer, and then it gets the work done for us. So we are going to see it is an overview, because I will forward you the video on this topic, which will be covering all the main shell commands. And here we can see a different types of command. For example, there's a who means the name of the current user who is working in the Linux. So there's a command named who, and then who am I to know the command prompt of the username. So if you do not know about your username, or you want your computer to print your name, so you can use this command who am I. So then to make a directory, there is a command called mkdir to create a directory. Then to change the directory name, there is a cd in the folder name. So cd is a creation of a directory where you can enter into already created folders. So that way there are numerous command, and comparatively same as the commands that we were using in Windows. So this all you will be means very familiar with the, if you'll go through our videos that I'll send you in forthcoming time. So here we can see, for example, there is a RMDIAR is for removing already created folders, LS for listing all the files and the folders created in the Linux, and then PWA is to present working directory in whatever folder we are working. To know that directory, we can use a PWD. So in my next video, you see and you go through the main commands used in the Linux and understand the concept of the shell commands. So till then, take care and stay safe. Thank you very much.